Welcome back to another edition of Rare Delicacies. Today I'd like to talk about films that get, well, misinterpreted and even in some cases completely lambasted for that particular reason. It's quite saddening when you have a film that's made with a particular intention in mind and it's presented in a way to make it unique and interesting, but then through the short-sightedness of either the critics or the audiences, the film winds up getting severely misinterpreted and winds up just getting buried by the sands of time. And really, it's a shame because the wonderful thing about the passage of time is that sensibilities change. Well, fortunately, sometimes something will come up from the ashes and wind up getting rediscovered. That is definitely the case with this film, today's example, Closetland. The film was produced by Brian Grazer and Ron Howard and was directed by first-time filmmaker Reda Bharadwaj. Nailed it, I think. But the film also stars Madeline Stowe and Alan Rickman. The film is a very minimalistic piece, entirely taking place in an interrogation room. It kind of looks like MC Escher's basement. The film entirely focuses on an interrogator and a victim, and what's fascinating about this particular film in the way it's executed is that it can be interpreted so many ways. On one side, you can look at it entirely on the surface of a fascist regime interrogating a potential insurgent, or you could go even deeper beyond that. So for today, I went to visit my good friend David Horgan, who you might remember from the Cinema Schlock Society. So as a wonderful change, he's the one who introduced the film to me, and I absolutely exploded at this film. I loved it from the first minute all the way to the end. And because I loved it so much, I want to make sure you guys know about it. And since that's the mission of Rare Delicacies, I hope that what you see in the next couple of minutes motivates you to want to find it yourself. So I take you over to...
It's called Closetland.
On Laserdisc.
Yes, because it was never released on DVD.
Now, is there any reason why?
I don't know. I've been trying to find that out. The movie unfortunately bombed in the theaters. And it got a brief release on HBO, which is the only reason why I saw it. And the Laserdisc and videotape release, which I don't think did well, so I don't think they just have bothered to get around to it yet.
Just decided to bury it because it's like, where's the audience for this? Go on.
I think so. Which is, I think, a bit of a shame because nowadays, with things like the Me Too movement and women's rights becoming much more to the forefront, I think that this has a chance to reach a much wider audience now. It takes place in some repressive state. We don't know where. A woman, Madeline Stowe, is pulled out of her bed and brought to a room. The entire movie takes place in one room. The only other person, Alan Rickman, and I often refer to this as the best movie by Alan Rickman you've never seen, is her inquisitor. He is there to determine, well, he basically wants her to confess to crimes. She is a children's book writer, and she has just recently written a book called Closetland, hence the title. He wants her to sign a document saying that Closetland is basically propaganda work.
Smear campaign.
Yeah.
It's Fire and Fury.
Something like that, yes. I wouldn't quite go that far, but yeah, okay. The characters in it are actually dissidents, and it's supposed to be like a message to them and all this stuff.
Kind of like a call to arms.
Yeah,
type
and
deal.
she's going, I don't know what you're talking about. This is just a children's book, for God's sake.
All right, see, now you're intriguing me even more because it's the idea of how people interpret something completely different, whereas this person just meant it as something innocent. No malice aforethought, just it's this thing, but everyone else builds it up to be something else.
Well, I had a person who refused to see Avatar, but because he thought it was liberal propaganda. I'm dead serious. He thought it was all about environmentalism and all that fun stuff. Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. Going back to Closetland, that's what's going to intrigue me about this, to see how just one little thing can just spark levels of hostility that just you didn't think were there before. Is there any other facts about this movie that you want to tell us about?
Not a whole lot. Its main claim to fame is its absolute obscurity. No one's heard of this. There is one thing. If you decide you want to see it, you don't actually have to go buy a Laserdisc player because they're really hard to find now. It's actually available on YouTube. The
whole point of Rare Delicacies is to shed light on films such as this. So once we get out on the flip side, I will definitely tell you how we think. So with that, let's move.
told you.
Yeah. And movies like this is the reason why I invented Rare Delicacies. This movie demands to be seen in any shape, way, or form possible. And it is an absolute tragedy that this thing hadn't seen life beyond Laserdisc. Recently, Mother came out. You said you saw Mother recently.
Oh, yes.
And if you've been on Narcotic Casserole, you know that I reviewed that sucker twice. It is not often that we get films with abstract presentation where you have to leave a lot of your interpretation to yourself. This one, I think, anyone who couldn't handle Mother, honestly, you're not going to be able to handle this one. This one,
probably, yeah.
This one goes a lot further beyond. You think it's going to be a political thriller, and then it goes way deeper, and it becomes something much more primal and much more uncomfortable just on an emotional level. In the beginning, you think what the government thinks, that Closet Land is going to be some anti-government propaganda thing, and then it becomes something worse. And, before we continue on, no, it turns out that the whole thing was a coping mechanism to help her deal with a tormented childhood. At least that's what my interpretation was. I don't know, what was your interpretation?
Yeah, Closet Land was, yes. That was, it was a coping mechanism for her. Though, it's interesting, we're two white guys talking about what is primarily a feminist piece.
Yeah. I think it's kind of important that people do see it and interpret it in their own ways. And one way I definitely read into it is what people have to do in order to deal with tormented lives. I mean, the level of torture that she herself dealt with is not uncommon with anybody. I mean, people have suffered the similar kind of emotional torment.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah,
and you see gaslighting. You see a lot of things that men do to women throughout history and are happening now.
Yeah, exactly.
When he hits her, and then 2 seconds later say, "Oh, wasn't that bad?" Or saying, "I don't smoke." Then 2 minutes later,
he pulls out a cigarette and just starts puffing away.
Yeah. Or threatens he's going to burn out her eyes with a cigarette, and then deliberately brings the cigarette up to her eye.
Brings it up to her to trigger her. He goes out of his way to attack her at every single point of her mind in order to get what he wants out of it. But in the end,
she wins.
It even begs the question, even in the grand scheme, on the surface, you think that this is about I assume, totalitarian government trying to break her to see if her work is propaganda. For all we know, this whole thing isn't even really on that level. It may not even be a 1984 concept. This might be just entirely in her mind palace, just dealing with the abuses of her past. And this whole thing, the final resolution, is about her finally coming to peace with it, finally freeing herself of the burden of it, and moving on. I just had this epiphany right now.
I had never thought of it that way. That's possible. Yeah, that's possible.
If Alan Rickman's character is, for all intents and purposes, the man that used to abuse her in her youth, which would definitely explain the age difference, or the fact that he is still pretty young and she's relatively close to his age, but yet maybe
I honestly think he could be 40. In that film, and that would make her.
Well, in any case, compared to the Alan Rickman that we knew in his later years, this seems to be a lot younger comparatively. So it could be the memory of the man who used to abuse her,
as
the way she remembers him. That could reinforce the mind palace concept.
Yeah.
In this whole thing,
that's a really interesting interpretation of it.
It deserves to be interpreted. I like it when a writer can write something with the full intention of it being interpreted multiple ways. Even it ends with quotes about the idea of abuse of government and all that stuff. And I don't know if that's meant to be misleading or if it's meant to be taken literally. But once again, take it as you read it. So by and large, I think that's another reason this movie demands to be seen. So
definitely, you owe it to yourself to watch it.
Yeah, you said it's on YouTube?
On YouTube. Just type in Closet Land, it'll come up.
Closet Land on YouTube. Look it up.
Closet Land Rickman might do the trick.
Closet Land, Alan Rickman. Go for it right now. And if anyone who's actually still believes that petitions will still do anything, have to see it and probably, in my opinion, inevitably love it, I say start petitions, get this thing released widespread, either on DVD, on Blu-ray, even on streaming. It needs to be seen.
Amen.
I can't think much more to say. Otherwise, we'll just keep filleting the movie for hours on end. I'm okay with that, but I don't know if the audience will be. But I think we've sung enough praises up to it, but thank you for telling me about this one.
My pleasure. I'm really glad you liked it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm gonna make it my mission to make sure people see this one. So I'm John.
Yeah, I'm David.
And this one is On the Menu.